I've been excited to see this for a while. So basically they have launched an open version of Codex and Claude, this kind of like cloud hosted multi-threaded kind of battle. It's more like Codex and Devin as opposed to Claude Code, right? It's like cloud hosted. You can have multiple versions running constantly, and it's all powered by LangChain's stack. And the reason why I think it's amazing is because of what you just demoed on the open source front in terms of cost for these open source models, not just OpenAI's one, but all of the ones that we've covered in the previous shows, right? And you could plug them into an environment like this. Like, yeah, take me through it. What is it? Show it to me. This looks so.
Well, Tom, that's where I guess you can self-host this. And I'd started setting it up, I don't know, a month ago, or when I first saw it in their repository, and I couldn't get it running in the cloud. And then just yesterday, I saw them post about this hosted version. So if you just go to swe.langchain.com, then all you have to do is authenticate it with your GitHub account. And then it has direct, just like any coding apps, you authenticate it, it launches your GitHub splash screen, and then it has access to my GitHub account. So yeah, first looking at this, if you've used Codex, it looks very familiar. And I would say so far, it seems most closely modeled after Codex.
Yeah, so they talk about it as an open source asynchronous coding agent, which basically just means you can fire off a bunch of stuff. It can see the open, I guess, tickets or issues on any repository you have, and then you can assign those to multiple instances of this. And then it has effectively in its architecture, and we'll share the blog post in the show notes, but in its architecture, effectively, it has the GitHub issue and the repo as its inputs. And then it has a manager kind of router component in the graph, a planner agent, and then the programmer sub-agent effectively. And within that, each component of the planner and the programmer have like a React loop and tool calling. And then once the programmer is finished, it can then open a pull request for you to review.
Yeah.
And in the video that the guys shared a couple of days ago, it was cool because he basically just said like Open SWE, the Open SWE developer is one of the most significant contributors to the Open SWE project.
Really?
Yeah. It was like, 70% of something, or so it was a significant amount had been contributed to the package, this thing you're looking at on the screen right now, from itself, which is quite very Inception-esque.
That's awesome. I will say I was pretty impressed just with like the usability and the UI layout. I think it's much better than Codex from that standpoint. However, you can see these example projects I tried, all of them have errors. So and I just set this up for the first time last night. So maybe I need to start with something more simple. I don't know, but some of these also ran for quite a while. And then like one of these ran, it was like $20, and then it didn't finish.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think that's probably something on my side. That's the other thing is, at least at the moment with the hosted version, you are, I don't know, limited, I guess. You have 3 options, which is still pretty good. I'm interested in deploying the self-hosted version and trying to integrate, like the Ollama and some of these other providers to have that same flexibility I just showed you on the open code.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's get it running. Maybe we can put it into the vault. That'd be sick. I'll try it as well between now and then. If you go to the config, like how much control do you have over this thing?
It's basically just setting up your authentication. You have a lot more control on the models configuration. So on this side, you have quite a bit. You can set, like your max context and your limits there. But what's really cool is you can configure the specialized models, like different models for your planner, different models you have a programmer model, a reviewer model, a router model.
I'll just chuck this in the chat if you like. And you can pull up the model, the actual agent architecture if you want, because that would give a bit more context to this.
Yeah, that would be good because it shows
just
the
go,
planner.
Just go to the search, it'll be faster, and just put in Open SWE LangChain, and we'll get right to it. We'll put it in the show notes as well. Yeah, that top one.
But yeah, there you go. There's that.
Yeah, that one. If you just double click on it, yeah.
Sorry, I think it's down here.
Yeah. Here we go.
There we go.
Like, so you can customize the model for that planning loop component before it generates the plan. And then you can customize the model and the temperature basically for the programmer loop. And the programmer loop is interesting because it's got it's got like the subgraph, right? It's got the primary React loop and then a reviewer sub-agent by the looks of it.
And I would imagine when we spin this up in LangGraph Cloud,
Yeah.
remember we showed the different assistants. So you can create different assistants with different configurations. I would imagine that's how this is set up.
Yeah. If you go back to the actual app, what else can you like dive into it in the config there and those, router model name. Okay, right. And the router temperature, summarizer, maximum token output, and then the MCP service. Okay, cool. So you've got enough control. What does it mean? What does that top one mean actually? So you can have a max number of context actions and a max number of review actions. An action consists of a tool call and a maximum number of those actions that are allowed within the context of a generation phase, right? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Have you used like the deep researcher on LangChain OAP? And then sometimes you'll get a message that says you've hit 25 iterations.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, there are different reasons for it, but it's kind of like rate limiting. If something gets stuck in a loop, you don't want it to run forever.
Yeah, like Claude gets stuck like installing and reinstalling the same Tailwind package 100 times. And I'm like, well, that was an expensive process.
Yep. This is just a template, their UI app that I had loaded up. So I'm just going to run a simple check for bugs so you can see what this actually looks like while it's running. But it's also it's really cool that you can switch between when this gets going. You'll see the planner view and the programmer view. And then the detail, it's laid out really nicely where it's still very clean, but you can expand and still see all the details here. But also they've integrated Daytona,
Yeah.
which we've talked about quite a bit. So all of the actions execute in a Daytona sandbox container.
Right. So the virtual secure code environment.
Yep. So here you see it's the planner making the plan, and then it'll kick it over to the programmer, and you can switch back and forth. And then from there, it works pretty similarly to Codex, where it will do like pull requests, and then gives you a shortcut to GitHub, and then you execute those. One thing that's really, really cool is this, if you click on this model button, well, right now it doesn't show much. When it actually starts executing and using the different agents or the different models assigned, it'll give us a breakdown of each model, what percentage of the token usage, what the cost is. And that's really, really cool feature. A lot of things have that, but just the way that they've laid it out, so nice.
Yeah, that is really good. Actually, this is a really good point. So yeah, being able to monitor this token usage by session, understand where everything's going. I love it when, particularly the LangChain guys, when they build a version of something in the market, an AI app in the market, like what they did with the most recent release of the Deep Researcher, is you basically get to see what's under the hood of how these apps are actually built because they reverse engineer everything, but they give you a like under the hood view. Right. The other thing is like, you look at the model use there. If you highlight that again, like the usage amounts. I read this article recently, and this is a great example of when you're thinking about costs and model costs, often we kind of focus on the high level number of like the output tokens, but actually when you look at usage, it's often more focused on the input tokens, right? You can see your input token count there is like 300,000 already, but the output component is only 30,000. So actually your cost focus it's more critical on the input side, particularly with this kind of use case, which is pretty interesting.
One of these was, I think it hit like 30 million.
Input. Whoa.
That's what it said. But it wasn't very expensive because it was all input.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what's up with these or why they aired. You also lose, if you're running their hosted version, you don't see the traces in Langsmith. So that's another reason I'm looking forward to deploying our own so we can show on the back end what's going on. I don't have that visibility here.
So is that still running on that running version? Is that
it
still?
It is. That's why I was trying to show that on a different one so you could.
Yeah. So the output, just so go back to that. So that's actually what it looks like at the end of the output, and it lists the tasks. The UI in this is beautiful. This is great.
Sorry.
And then
yeah. So you can drill down,
and then it's summarized every task that it's done. Can you open a summary? Like anything really? Yeah. Okay. Cool. And then you can those components. Yeah. Nice.
And when you start diving into really any of the LangChain, LangGraph platforms that they've designed, whatever they're calling it, they're not like products. I don't know. you'll see a lot of this comes down to prompt engineering. It's so important, and you can tell that they highly emphasize that while they're building these things.
That's an interesting point, actually. I guess they do have because they have a prompt manager, right, in the back end. So every time they do one of these, it's kind of like a use case kind of exposition of their stack, right? Because you can have prompt management, prompt versioning, all of that sort of stuff within the LangGraph, or sorry, their LangChain kind of environments, the hosted ones and stuff. So